Agenda is pretty much as it has been for the last couple of weeks. A very brief introduction to the Canton Network. We're spending less and less time talking about what Canton's all about, largely because I think the audience now really understands what Canton's all about and some of the features and some of the users. But we're just going to do a very quick 1 or 2 slide refresher on that. Then we have Kelly joining us, and really looking forward to that. Hopefully we'll get to see a demo as well. And before we go on to Canton News, what's been happening in the ecosystem, and the infomercial piece from Launchnodes, which is where we explain exactly what Launchnodes is doing on Canton, before we share some useful jump-off points and the Q&A. And I'll put the links to all of the kind of referred companies and offerings in the chat as well. So you'll have those to click on and look at. In terms of introduction to Canton, if you don't know, it's the only public blockchain with institutional grade privacy. So there are a lot of layer ones out there. They're spending a lot of time creating virtual wallets and ZK proofs and side chains, all to kind of create this kind of privacy model. Canton's had it baked in from the start. So Canton's been in development for 10+ years, launched 18 months ago, and the numbers are incredible in terms of assets on the network and daily trades above kind of 400 billion for repo trades. And again, the users of Canton are a who's who of financial services. So everyone from Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Santander, HSBC, they're all using Canton right now, and they're using it in earnest, along with hundreds of other organizations who are increasingly involved building apps, making features and functionality available. And as I said, the numbers are quite staggering. For a blockchain that launched 18 months ago, the volume of business is immense. And why are people using it? They're using it for the privacy, obviously, but also the nirvana in financial services is always instant settlement. If you can settle straight away, you know your positions in real time, you're not having to collateralize your lending. It's all very instantaneous and atomic. That's what Canton offers. And because of that, there's huge amounts of kind of lending cost reduction and other cost savings by putting your systems onto Canton. And that's the conversation that we're having on a daily basis with organizations looking to move from TradFi to Canton or to move business processes onto the blockchain. Jaydeep, over to you, I think.
Thank you, Rajesh. And really, thank you, Kelly. We're really excited to have you on here. We try and bring applications to these webinars to make them relevant and interesting in terms of what people can do on the network and what businesses are doing. Kelly, thanks for joining us. Our format is to sort of ask you, prior to being a founder of Chata, what your background and history is a little bit.
Yeah, good to meet everybody, and thanks for having me on for sure. I always like to talk about the Canton Network, not so much myself, so I'll try to rip through this part as fast as possible. I guess I'll take a step back into completion of I finished my master's. It was in financial derivative mathematics. Was just about to go into actually oil and gas energy-based investment banking, and then met the president of our graduate society, and they were starting up a new pre-seed fund incubator out of the university here in Calgary, and thought that would be something that would just be super fun to do. So got involved in that, looked at a bunch of different projects, and then there was a very brilliant physician who came from Germany actually to Calgary, who was an expert in cardiovascular imaging. Long story short, myself and 3 other co-founders founded, it was a computer vision AI company for medical images. So we were very early adopters of technology. It was not easy. We knew where we wanted to go, but had to invent along the way. Built that up to, I don't know, 250, 300 people. And Thoma Bravo had acquired the organization a few years ago. And then part of that was getting into Chata, which was really started to solve the problems that I was having. And that's just connecting people to data. If you're a non-technical person, you don't write database query language, you don't do that type of stuff. You know your business and you know the information you want. There's that gap between the user and the database or the data assets. And that's what we wanted to do at Chata to really connect those dots up.
Amazing. That's certainly a non-traditional blockchain background. Thanks for sharing. So in terms of that question of connecting people to data without being an expert in database querying languages, for financial institutions, what problem is Chata solving today? And through Canton?
Yeah, for sure. So of course, the main problem is you have executives, you have operators, traders, you name it. Think of a lot of the traditional finance roles themselves. The entire industry, and just to back up a quick bit, so Chata works actually across different industries. I mean, we've done work in the retail space with Nike and airlines and supply chain logistics. Really, Chata's platform gets used across the board. When it comes to traditional finance, you walk into some of these operations and you see 6 screens up, right? Lots of dashboards, heavy dashboards, right? And so the thought process is, why do you have so many dashboards? It's because you need information readily available for yourself. And a lot of the time you may not have the information you want and you're dependent upon somebody to get it for you, right? So time is money. And this was where a conversational interface, so you can have your mission control core dashboards that you're monitoring, but now bringing in a conversational user interface where they can actually query the data that's not readily available to them. That solves the big problem of speed. So like traders, as an example, if they're trading maybe against some instruments that require, let's just say the best strategies require also access to alternative data as well, but that alternative data is maybe not readily available in their Bloomberg terminal, and that they can just query for that information and retrieve that back. The secondary piece and the bigger use case with the system in financial markets in general is the ability to use the natural language interface, query your data, and then set that up as a proactive alert. So what it does is it'll actually monitor data for you and just notify you if something happens that you care about, or it will run these scheduled analytics jobs to say, take a look at all the trades for this week, whether that's call options for this particular symbol as an example, and it can go through all those and let you know all the deltas and the volumes of the contracts so that you're better prepared for the next week of trading and some of the trends going on. So that's traditional finance. Now, in the DeFi space and in blockchain especially, we got involved in the Canton Network because of, again, what was pointed out at the start, financial institutions, right? We're not involved in kind of the crypto meme coin types of areas. We want to be focused in the chains that are very passionate about the larger institutional area. So that's why we got involved there. Now, there's not tons of trading going on. There's some big, and I can show you in the demo, there's some large transfers going to some of the exchange providers now, which is making things really interesting. But for the most part, people want to take a look at their reward incentives. They want to take a look at how much bandwidth they're utilizing. They want to be able to set alerts around that for user growth and all those types of pieces. And then more importantly, just generally look at network traffic, who's exchanging with who, and those types of pieces as well. But that's all non-technical people who just want to get access to the data. They know blockchain, they know DeFi, they know the questions they want to ask. They just need to be connected up into that data.
And then within that context of essentially having a GPT for your financial workflows that you're now bringing on chain and the data you want to talk to, so you're having a conversation in your own business context, and rather than it be where do I go on holiday, or how do I make myself more emotionally available to my partner, you're asking how much Canton coin am I spending on gas? What's my user growth looking like? How do I understand what my users are also interested in the network? If they're using my application, what else are they doing? In terms of the yeah, it's really hard to make data actionable inside these secure regulated environments. How's Chatter making that happen?
Yeah, I mean, we have quite a large advantage with the architecture that Chata uses. So the app I'll show you is Sync Insights. That's a subsidiary of Chata focused specifically on DeFi Canton apps, but it uses Chata's platform. Chata's platform is actually non-LLM based.
Okay.
So it doesn't use large language models. We did that purposefully because in large institutions, you cannot have hallucinations even 5% of the time, which is industry best, which again, I even question that. You can't have hallucinations because if you're making multi-million-dollar decisions on data that's being returned that's incorrect, that just doesn't work. Secondarily, a lot of the infrastructure you require in your own environment to use a lot of these large language models, it's huge. You need these GPUs and you need all these other type of stuff. The platform itself, actually, the inference model runs on CPU. So it's about 0.2% the cost to run in production. So you have determinism, which is awesome for regulated environments, and you also have a really low operating costs as well. Those things together, everything actually gets deployed in the customer's environment. So for regulated institutions, if it's private data that they have, they can access the public chain data through Sync Insights. But if they have their own data store that they want the same type of experience for their users, that gets all deployed into the environment to the point where even, you know, myself as the CEO of Chata, I can't even see what you know, the unique data is, right? Nike, you can't even see, I couldn't even see what the upcoming LeBron James lineup of shoes is going to be because it's private, it's regulated, and it's all within the control of the customer, which, as you can tell, privacy, Canton, all that other stuff, I think it aligns really quite well with what everyone's pushing for.
That's really interesting that you mentioned Nike and real world scenarios outside of blockchain, whereby the privacy is so important and you've been designing, you know, completely independently of Canton with using artificial intelligence with a view that data privacy is really key. In terms of coming back to Canton, what specific, you know, capabilities and architectural principles of Canton have made you excited about bringing Chatter to it, and obviously being so successful as well? I mean, for those who don't know, Chatter is one of the top 10 applications on the network, and we understand that many of the Canton team wake up and talk to Chatter first to understand what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the usage is huge. Like there's over 5,000 data requests a day, and that's growing quite a large bit as well. So I can share the application in a second because as opposed to talking about it's a little bit better.
Actually, why don't we do that now? Why don't we move to the demo so we can cut to it? Yeah.
Yeah, because then that's just a little bit easier at that
Absolutely.
standpoint to kind of explain. So again, what we wanted to go for was less of an explorer, which I think is a big summarization of everything. So we have those pieces as well, but what people really try to pay attention to is, you know, especially around looking at the app activity. So there's a few different personas of users right now in this space. Number one is like the CFOs, the accountants, people managing funds that have wallets in the account. They just want to see the inflow of Canton coin and the outflow of Canton coin. Then you have like node operators and that type of stuff who are managing some of the different groups. And then you have others, which is, you know, wanting to take a look at some of this activity. So in this case, what you're seeing here is these are all the feature transfers by round for the provider organizations, which by provider just means the app applications. And then you're able to see really a lot of information here. And these are numbers of transfers, right? So everything I'm showing you in these dashboards are actually built through a natural language query. So if I go to just one down here, which will be, you know, the hourly activity, of each provider organization. This is just backed by a natural language query. It would just ask the number of feature transfers by provider organizations, and I wanted that group by hour for the last 24 hours. So pretty simple. I ask what I want. I don't need to do a big multi-sentence prompt. I don't have to do any of that other type of stuff. And now the system, within less than a second, generates the database query. Then that goes and executes against the database and returns the data from here. So all of this data, of course, is coming from the Scan API, which is just all the available data, and shows up here. Then you see these different pieces. So like if we want to take a look at, some examples of some of the groups, doing some things here, you could take a look at the case of like a retail wallet. So I click on it, and actually we use our own technology where you don't have to pre-configure and pre-build all these drill downs. They actually just come out of the box. So then you could see here, okay, this is an overwhelming list of data, 1,700, 1,800 records. What are other ways I can take a look at that, right? You get the data, you can redimension it to take a look at, who's sending, and you can see, okay, well, in this hour, someone sent almost 19,000 Canton coin to Kraken, right? Which is probably getting it over to the exchange. But then the other interesting part is to take a look at the activity in these graphs. And some of the retail wallet ones are pretty overwhelming sometimes, because you can see here there's a couple kind of airdrop nodes that are sending in the same kind of hourly time frame to specific types of wallets as well. So you can look at network activity this way. Regulators would be able to take a look at this as well. But more importantly, the finance teams will also be able to see these things as well in a really easy visualization that they could take a look at there. And that's one particular profile. You could take a look at some other profiles here where there's like 902 records, and then you can see here the graph looks kind of a lot smaller. But when you zoom into it, you can see here that, okay, in this hour, there was 368 transactions between this one and then this one as well here. So there's like really lots of different ways where instead of looking through big rows of data, you can see those things quite simply from there. Okay. Now the core though is based around the conversational interface, which is down here. So user logs in, they see a bunch of these different topics. So if they're interested in taking a look at transfers data, they could take a look at a data preview. They could build columns. They could take a look at these, and you could see here just a sample data where you see provider, receiver, sender, everything else like that. This, out of all of the usage, is by far the #1 usage of the system, because you can really get down to that, to the core information there. Some other ones would be you just want to take a look at like latest prices. This is another big one, is taking a look at the bandwidth purchases. This is bandwidth purchases for us. You can take a look at general bandwidth purchases. As you know, how you value a lot of these networks is based upon the gas fees. Then you could take a look at them from there, look at any trends, big purchases, drill down further on there. You just have a lot of ability to see these different pieces. And then at any given time, if I want to track bandwidth purchasing, I can create a data alert. If I want to be able to save this to look for future, I can add that to a dashboard, create a new dashboard out of it. It's really designed to merge ease of access to data with a lot of the traditional kind of business intelligence and decision intelligence software that exists there as well. So, but for the most part, people are looking internally. But then if you take a look at, I'll just do one more query here and then stop. If I want to take a look at the top 10, transfers for the last 24 hours as an example. What you're going to see, and I think what'll be a bigger trend, is now you're starting to see these huge amounts of money with some custodial wallets, but at the same time, you're starting to see more and more providers, which is the centralized exchanges, and then also the OTC transactions as well. So that functionality is out, or coming out today. So you'll see a lot more usage around people looking into what's all the OTC and CEX activity going on.
And are your users predominantly analysts in financial institutions? Are they traders? What's the, what's Bob doing with Lucy? And
yeah, I mean, in traditional, I mean, right now the Canton Network, of course, is still kind of getting into a lot of the large financial institutions. So for the most part, those groups are looking into the system just to see really what's going on in the network. On the traditional finance side of things, so the thing I should have mentioned about the Chata platform is it's actually not an application. It's a developer. It's a developer platform. So all the functionality you see here in Sync Insights is all openly available to any other app developers or any institutions or anything like that want to utilize it. So one of our customers is Quick Equity, and they have the Opera feed. They're pulling in the Opera feed, so all the equity and equity options trade data. And there's a natural language interface that's, you wouldn't even know really that Chat is involved in that. It's just an interface. And then the users from that standpoint can set up alerts around bullish call option buying volume, short squeeze setups, those types of things. So those are called more of the retail pro-tail types of traders for those user personas. And then in the case of another customer, Sports Alpha, which is a sports analytics and betting analytics company, they utilize the system as well for the sports bettors and in certain cases fantasy people, and now newly prediction market traders as well, in order to look at all those sports statistics, set alerts and trends, take a look at when some of the futures lines on Super Bowl events and things like that are starting to move, to better inform them what to do with some of the prediction market areas as well. So definitely more operational users for sure. Because the executive level, they typically have their reporting from that standpoint, but it's really down into just people who need to access data multiple times a day. That's really the core personas.
And I think having seen the platform and then understanding from you that it's a tool that people can build from, there's sort of a two-part question I'd have is that in 12-24 months, what do you see as Chata's future use cases and growth? But then also, what do you see Canton's future growth and trajectory being? And beyond simply obviously monster volumes and more of the same.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I'll just start with Chata. So we got involved with this, involved with the Canton Network, not necessarily just to build an application and have that available to everybody. We got involved because there are an enormous amount of use cases across a whole bunch of different apps, across a whole bunch of different financial institutions, where the platform can be employed and add like real tangible ROI. So where you see things in the next 12 to 24 months, and I can't talk about some things just because of confidentiality, but you will start seeing more of Chata's platform integrated into some of the other players within the ecosystem. And then also for even some of those players, traditional finance types of use cases as well. So that's really where Chata is going. Sync Insights will be releasing a new app here in a couple of weeks as well. They'll continue to try build and collaborate and everything else in building value in the Canton ecosystem. So that's where they're going from there. But when it comes to Canton Network itself, I am extremely bullish about it. I think there's a little bit of an identity thing, where is this for financial institutions, or is there just going to be a bunch of kind of different retail people involved? So I think there's a little mix of both, but just knowing the team of founders of Canton, the Canton Foundation, all of the super validators, they are very, very thoughtful about what this network is designed for and the value that it's going to add. And you will see, of course, some announcements coming out with some very, very large institutional players. So I think, in the old venture days, everybody looks for the hockey stick growth. You're going to see the hockey stick growth with the Canton Network very quickly here in 2026. And then at the same time, you have lots of new apps coming on that have just brilliant ideas and brilliant things that can add value to the network and just financial services in general. So that's that's a really compelling reason as well to continue to stay bullish on the Canton Network.
Thank you, Kelly. We talk about it being systemically important. Is that, as a network, is that something that resonates in your mind, or is that overstating it?
I mean, it depends. How are you defining systemically important?
I'm defining it as it's a technology that has application for multiple different sectors. It will have its own sort of gravity in terms of drawing technologists in, and it will serve real businesses and real people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree wholeheartedly. And there's some other really, some really good organizations involved in the network that are building, some of the rails and infrastructure required for even cross-chain and a lot of those other pieces. So I think I absolutely agree with it. I know from the whole, sports betting, sports analytics, everything else, which is outside of finance, but kind of, I'll say interrelated, that like there's huge applications for it there. And then, as some of the groups out there who are very much focused on stable coins and really the future of financial services, which really is stable coins for sure. There's a lot of really good companies who are quite focused in that area. And I think in the future, it's going to be not me writing you paper checks. It's not going to be me doing wire transfers. It's going to be me sending stable coins that are backed by the currency assets in my account. Then those will get burned and money's in your account. And then if you go to send from there, it'll be kind of the same type of thing. But like you pointed out right at the start, that instant settlement is absolutely critical. And you're seeing a lot more people really talking about this from an operational standpoint, not only from a theoretical standpoint.
Kelly, thank you. It's a pleasure to have had our first bona fide polymath on this Inside Canton Network. So thank you very much for your time. And if people have questions, then please pop them in the chat, and we'll try and get Kelly to answer them. Thanks. Over to you, Rajesh.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, JD. Really appreciate the session there. We always feature kind of Canton news just to give folks a kind of whistle-stop wrap-up of what's happened over the past week. And I've said it before, but we always kind of thought, is this going to be a quiet section where we're going to struggle some weeks? But actually, every single week over the past 6 weeks, there's been new news. There's been the exchange listings, the purpose listings, the ETPs, the new platforms coming on stream. And this week is no different. So we've cherry-picked some of the kind of news stories of the week and some of the innovations that are happening on Canton. And let's start with Archax, which is a UK-regulated exchange broker custodian that's now integrated with Canton. So again, more liquidity, more tokenization coming to Canton. Alchemy Pay. So we have customers every day reaching out to us saying, how do we move funds from fiat USD onto Canton? What's the best way to do it? Do we go via Kraken? Do we go via KuCoin? How do we get a wallet? These are kind of typical questions we get in our help desk on a daily basis. Alchemy Pay's come along, and now you can buy Canton Coin in 173 countries, I believe, using Apple Pay, Google Pay, or a credit card, essentially. So for folks who were struggling before, it's a very straightforward on-ramp onto Canton. We've talked before about Circle and USDC coming to Canton, and we've talked about Circle X Reserve, which is their beautiful means of moving Circle USDC from one blockchain, for example, Ethereum, onto Canton. And the way X Reserve works is you can basically send USDC on Ethereum into a vault effectively. It's then burnt or locked, and you can mint the equivalent amount of Circle on, say, Canton. So the problem, again, of moving Circle between Canton, Ethereum, and elsewhere is largely been solved, and USDCX is now live as we understand it on Canton as well. And then the fourth kind of integration news we had this week and platform launch was from a company called Equilend. And anyone who's kind of involved in financial services knows the pain of post-trade settlements and the processes that happen after a trade's been agreed or you think it's been agreed. So Equilend OneSource is all about being a single source of truth for that trading data. So if I want to trade with JD, we think we've got a strike price, we think we've got the terms agreed. Actually, Equilend kind of holds that information and becomes that kind of source of truth. And it spits out, after you've made the trade, the details of that trade into the trading systems that JD uses and that I use as an exact mirror copy. So reconciliation becomes a lot easier. The problems of kind of fat thumb syndrome and other things where JD thinks the trade looks one way, I think it's slightly different, goes away. And Canton, again, is the ideal kind of platform for doing that kind of activity. On the featured app side, so again, every week in the last few weeks, there have been 14 or so different featured apps that have been approved with all sorts of different utility use cases, features. We've plucked out a couple this week. Noviz is one of those kind of dashboarding champions, I guess, of Canton that's been around for a fair while. They've got a range of tools and utilities, and they've just launched a Chrome plugin so that you can interrogate the Canton network. So if you go to ccbrowser.com, you can see that plugin there. And ChainSafe. So there's a lot of kind of desire for people to learn DAML. DAML's obviously the smart contract language of Canton. ChainSafe have built a DAML copilot effectively. So if you're trying to code in DAML, you can go along and use ChainSafe's tool, and it'll help you with your development. So a couple of featured apps, as I say, and Kelly touched on this, the use cases and the richness of apps coming through is phenomenal and ever changing. Another real innovation that we kind of grabbed our attention this week, and again, it addresses the on-ramp, off-ramp question. Braille, which has been one of the original kind of stable coins on Canton and one of the original wallet providers on Canton, has made available virtual bank accounts on Canton. So you can essentially have an account on a bank account effectively on Canton. You can receive funds via a wire transfer, and then you can mint the equivalent amount of Canton coin or stable coin. And that's pretty impressive as well. So for people who have been having those issues of moving fiat to Canton coin or to stable coins, Braille's automations platform is a way to address that, essentially. And the final piece really, and this is somewhat for kind of ecosystem insiders, I suppose, and users typically won't necessarily see some of these changes, but Canton has a mainnet upgrade happening in early December. That's been in planning for a while. There's been testing this week happening, and application rewards have been changing. And again, if you're a user, you wouldn't necessarily see much of this, but a lot of the applications have been re-engineering themselves or changing the way that they do subscriptions. And that's something that has been ongoing and will carry on this month, certainly. What that doesn't impact, though, is the kind of fees that are generated on the network that gets divided amongst the featured applications. And JD, did you want to touch on what that means and what that looks like?
Yeah, thanks, Rajesh. And I think it's really riffing on some of the points that you made earlier about the applications. One of the things that layer ones have struggled with is creating applications where independent organizations want to come, they want to fund themselves, and they want to bring users. And none of the featured apps that Rajesh talked about have received a grant from Canton. That isn't the mechanism that works, and yet they've built whole businesses around it. And Canton's principle is very simple in its tokenomics, which is let's build useful applications on blockchain and bring users on. And The reward structure has changed a little bit, and it's rewarding applications that have utility and that bring users to access that utility. And the pot of application rewards is funded by wholesale financial services businesses bringing transaction volumes to the Canton network, and the gas fees are architecturally designed to support an ecosystem of developers and applications. And so what we see in terms of these, change in application rewards is a positive, whereby good applications are going to have a bigger pot of rewards for themselves and for their users. And I think that quite simple mechanism has been missing in a lot of layer ones, and the inventiveness of it and the innovation of it for Canton, I think the results are quite clear as to how effective it's proving to be. I don't know if I've missed anything, Rajesh.
No, I think that's a perfect summary. Appreciate that. One final kind of piece of news which hit the wires, I think, a couple of hours ago, is that Digital Asset has just raised another $50 million to kind of continue expanding. As of, I think it's about 4 or 5 weeks ago, they just announced a $130 million raise. This time they raised money from BNY, iCapital, NASDAQ, S&P Global. So, some big names there kind of backing Canton and backing Digital Asset. So if you're in any doubt as to the kind of seriousness and the systemic importance, in Jaideep's words, of Canton, it's really being backed by the big players who expect this to kind of grow.
Does that mean I can get a new laptop, Rajesh?
You can certainly get a new camera, Jaideep. So Launchnodes and Canton, this is our infomercial piece. We've shrunk it. Like every week it's got smaller and smaller, because I think people increasingly know what Launchnodes do as a business. We're a Canton Foundation member. We offer 2 types of nodes: full validator nodes when they're available, and also multi-tenant nodes, which is relatively unknown. But essentially, if you want to run apps, if you want to run Chata, for example, you'll be able to do that with a subscription to a multi-tenant node without having to run a full validator node. The other piece is Launchnodes Labs. So we have a team of Daml developers, and we're pretty experienced in writing smart contracts and end-to-end applications. So again, if you've got an idea there, or you're working on something and want some support, we're there to help. The other piece, just to kind of update people, I think there's a kind of pause right now on a large number of new validator nodes coming on stream, and that's been in place for a while. But gradually we're expecting that to lift over the coming months, and it's not going to be a massive deluge of new validator nodes, but I think the foundation is considering small batches moving forward in a few weeks' time. But we only know a very small amount about that, and obviously the foundation makes its own decisions. But just to give you an idea that the gates are kind of going to reopen, we believe, in a few weeks' time. And great resources. So we've posted a lot of this in the chat as well, if you scroll up to the kind of originals. But we're not the Canton Network, we're not the Canton Foundation. We're very fortunate to have become part of this ecosystem. But there's immensely useful resources at Canton.network and at the Canton Foundation's revamped website. You can find all out about super validators, the news, Daml, Quick Start, all sorts of things which are super useful. And one of the podcasts, again, it's in the chat window, the OGs of Canton, the Don Wilson, Yuval, Eric, others, talk about the background to Canton, why they started it, how it emerged, what they've been doing for the past kind of 10 years of planning and building. And it's a really fascinating 4-part series. So if you've got the time and you're able to, I'd recommend listening to that. And similarly, Melvis, who heads up the Canton Foundation, has had podcast series which are available on YouTube as well. So again, there's more good material there with insights from different ecosystem partners as well. And we're here every week. and have been for a while with the longest running Canton podcast in the world. We will be back next week on the 11th. We've got some more exciting guests, and again, thank you, Kelly, for joining us today. But other apps and other innovations will always bring them to you in these sessions. So come join us again, and feel free to reach out to us in between if there's anything you'd like to know. And let me hand over to you, Jaydeep, for questions.
Yeah, do we have any questions in the chat? We don't, I believe. We do. Sorry.
No, I don't think we do at the moment.
No,
if anyone does have any, feel free to either speak if you'd like to, or tap it into the chat window.
Otherwise, we're very happy to give everyone 15 minutes back. And thank you for joining. I know people have come from all over the world. And have a good morning, good afternoon, and good evening.
Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate you being there.
Thanks, Kelly. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.